Hey guys, happy live. I'm super excited. I know I announced this on Instagram yesterday, but I'm hoping that you guys remember that it's Wednesday and we have a good group of you joining us. But in the meantime, I just wanted to remind you guys that nothing in this live is medical advice. I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. So it's, nothing's to treat or prescribe or diagnose. We're just chatting about nutrition, and I'm hoping to educate you and inspire you to do your own research and dig a little bit deeper into all things health. So I had a few pre-submitted questions. I'll do those while you guys submit your questions. Let me know if you guys can't hear me or if for whatever reason it's not working. I know it was glitching a few weeks ago. So the first question was, I had beautiful curly wavy hair when I was younger. Since I'm a vegetarian for 5 years and vegan for 2 years, my hair quality seriously declined and my wavy hair disappeared more and more. Now I eat meat again since about 2 years. My hair quality really improved and I expected my hair to return to its wavy texture again, but instead it went completely straight. I'm so frustrated and I miss my old wavy curly hair. Do you know why this happened, and do you think it's possible to go back to wavy hair? So this is actually pretty common when girls go through puberty. So for example, I had like pin straight hair until I went through puberty, and then my hair got really wavy and curly. Now, a lot of women also report this having to do with their thyroid. So when they get diagnosed with hypothyroid or they start developing hypothyroid symptoms, their hair will either go from like straight to curly or curly to straight. So we kind of have to determine what is our healthy type of hair. Not that it like matters that much. We just want to focus on being healthy, and our hair is going to do what it's going to do. But I've definitely heard of this. It's happened to me. It's happened to many people that I know and also have worked with, and I believe has to do with thyroid issues, as well as maybe has a hormonal component. So, there's no way we could forcefully change the texture of our hair. However, our goal is to just be as healthy as we can be, and whatever is our healthy disposition, it will be what it is. Hi, Jess. I was hoping to pre-submit a question for your next live. When I lost too much weight, one of my nipples retracted. My weight and hormones are restored, and I've tried the suction devices, but it has not helped. GYN says it's cosmetic because of the age I was when it happened and recommended I consult a plastic surgeon. I was wondering if you had any other thoughts about why it won't correct or solutions. Thank you. Have you looked into like doing things like breast massage or fascia? Like fascia work all around your body. A lot of times what can happen is things like that. We kind of have to determine when it happened. So was it because you lost too much weight, or was it because there was like maybe a hormonal or structural, were there other things going on during that time that could have possibly affected the health of the breast? Now, this is not my expertise, but I would probably be doing a process of elimination. If it's something that's cosmetic, I wouldn't stress about it unless it is something that like lowers your confidence. But yeah, I don't really have like a lot of advice other than just like focus on health as a whole. But I would say probably in like a retracted or inverted nipple is probably more common than you think. A lot of us think that like our bodies are supposed to be like perfect, what's portrayed maybe like in movies or, even like what other people's expectations of the female body is, but that's just not reality. And there are things that happen that are maybe not like cosmetically pleasing, but it's our body. Like, sorry, Why does an ovulation guarantee robust progesterone production? Is the presence of the corpus luteum not enough? I ask because if a woman is healthy enough to consistently ovulate, why would she produce inadequate progesterone? Thank you. Yes, you're only as healthy as your corpus luteum. So there are women that will actually ovulate, meaning they'll drop that egg, but their corpus luteum doesn't make them enough progesterone because that's actually like a cell or the egg sac that's coming from the ovary. So truly it's your ovarian cells that are in need of nutrients. Now, the corpus luteum is a robust gland that produces you progesterone for about 11 to 14 days. But remember that when you ovulate, that emptied egg sac takes about 24 hours to rapidly develop from an egg sac into a gland. So if you're hurting for nutrients, you may have enough to ovulate, but growing that corpus luteum into a gland is a whole nother energy depletion. It's a whole other need for nutrients. And so you might have enough nutrients to grow that corpus luteum into a sufficient enough gland to make you some progesterone, but not robust levels of progesterone. I hope that makes sense. So ovulation doesn't guarantee robust levels of progesterone unless we're fully nourished and our ovarian cells are working optimally. Their metabolism is working well. Hi, thanks for doing this. Of course, Catherine, I'm happy to be here. This is something I really enjoy. You guys always have the best questions. Thoughts on the olive oil and wild oregano drops since most are cut with canola veggie oil? Dr. Cass Ingram, the creator of Oregano, is very particular about where he sources everything. And I know for a fact that the olive oil is pure olive oil. I take oregano probably, well, I take it every day. Any suggestions for heart palpitations? Was recommended oral magnesium zinc. Oftentimes heart palpitations have a lot to do with potassium and obviously magnesium as well. But if you take too much magnesium and you're already deficient in potassium, it can be problematic. It can make them worse. So you usually want to take them both at the same time. I personally don't like doing potassium supplements. I prefer to do potassium from whole food sources like coconut water powder, goat's mineral whey, electrolyte-rich sources that have high potassium naturally. Thank you for all you do. Quick question. Sorry, I'm gonna mumble today because I did 2 podcast interviews. I've talked way too much. My max on talking today is already passed. Does mandarin juice work as well as orange juice? I would assume so. Yeah, I mean, most citrus juice is good and rich in vitamin C. What are some of your favorite gut healthy meals? I'm not really like into gut healthy. I focus on metabolic eating, so things that my body can easily digest, absorb, and utilize. Eggs and fruit tends to be something for me that digests really, really well. I also love to do like bona fides, bone broth soups. Like they have them in the freezer section, like French onion or tomato, basil, or their mushroom soup's really good. And I like to take that and then throw some frozen shrimp in there. Like I get the wild Argentinian shrimp at Costco, and then I pour that over rice. That's really, really easy to make. It's also super easy to digest. I'm trying to think of what else. I really like doing milk powder pancakes out of organic milk powder. That digests really well for me. And then I love like potato, like a good baked potato and a steak. Like that, something that digests really well for me. Super filling, like super satisfying. I also like to do like chicken thighs. I just, pro tip, you know, the fat content in chicken is full of polyunsaturated fatty acids. Like chickens just don't detox PUFAs like ruminant animals do. But a way to kind of counteract that is to cook your chicken on a rack or a barbecue, obviously, something where the fat can kind of drip through. So most of the fat can be discarded. So like when I make chicken thighs, for example, if I'm baking them, I bake them on a rack and then discard all the fat. Or I'll bake or put them on the barbecue. And I love like, oh, one of my favorite meals is like just white rice and like a really like well marinated, well cooked chicken thigh. Like that's so good to me. And like maybe a glass of orange juice. Have you ever tried or recommended osteopathy? It's really hard to find a really good osteopath, but if you can, they're amazing. I don't have one near me, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. But when you can find a good one, I would definitely jump on that. I just had my first postpartum ovulation, and it came with 3 days of full-on period-like bleeding. Is that from high estrogen? Could this mean my first period will be really harsh? Tips to prepare? They do say that like bleeding around ovulation has a lot, can do with estrogen dominance or sometimes hypothyroidism. But yeah, it's often associated with estrogen dominance. You just want to support estrogen elimination. So like raw carrot salad, detox lemonade can be helpful. making sure you're not super stressed the week leading up to your period, but I wouldn't stress about it. Stress is going to probably be the worst thing. Just let it happen and see how it goes. And then the following cycle, you can really focus in on what you need to focus on. I had tubal ligation 10 years ago, have had regular periods since then. Wondering if I produce progesterone, though. You mentioned something in that regard a few weeks ago. There's a lot of women who have had problems ever since they had tubal ligation. A lot of people who have progesterone deficiency and estrogen dominance since their tubal ligation. I don't think that is every single person, but there are many women that have reported to me that they had issues after that like tubal ligation or those tubes being tied. So I've even had people tell me that they had to get it reversed and it completely reversed their symptoms. So it's pretty common for women to experience like really heavy, clotty periods post tubal ligation. But again, is that everyone? I don't think so. Are there times of the month you seem to crave certain foods more? After ovulating, I feel like I'm pounding the carbs. Well, after you ovulate, your caloric needs go up about 300 to 500 calories, depending on how active you are, because now you're producing progesterone, which is stimulating your thyroid function. That's how your temperatures actually increase or go up. And so, think about your body is actually in preparation for a possible pregnancy. It doesn't know if the egg got fertilized until the egg actually would implant about 2-ish weeks later. And so your body's assuming that there was a fertilized egg and is preparing for a pregnancy. This is why your metabolism increases, and this is why your nutrient needs go up. And so, yeah, a lot of women will crave whatever they need during their luteal phase. I personally don't crave a lot anymore. I just find that if I don't eat enough, like if I'm not particular about eating enough, I don't sleep as well, or I'll wake up around that like liver time, like 3 to 4 a.m. Like it happened last night, for example. I woke up, and this rarely happens, and I could not go back to sleep. So I went downstairs and I chugged a huge glass of milk, and then I was able to go to sleep. So, that's kind of something that I notice is if I'm not very particular about eating enough during the day, I might have a little bit more of disrupted sleep, or I wake up kind of nauseous, meaning that I'm past the point of hunger. I'm nauseated. So I have to eat to, I guess, support my metabolism a little bit more carefully. But yes, occasionally I'll crave some things. I used to have a lot more cravings in the past, but occasionally I'll crave some things. They're always random, like it's not just chocolate. Sometimes it's like shrimp. Sometimes it's like oysters. Sometimes I'm really craving like liver. It just, it's interesting how your cravings shift over time, and you start to crave more like nutrient dense things that wouldn't necessarily appeal to you. However, it appeals to your body. Ovarian cysts, best initial nourishing steps to take. Thinking I have PCOS, off the pill, birth control last month, copper IUD now. Well, remember that polycystic ovarian syndrome and having ovarian cysts are two separate things. I know it's confusing, but polycystic ovarian syndrome is where the follicles are having a hard time maturing into an ovulation. So when you get an ultrasound, it appears that you have follicles, which is also called cysts in the medical literature. And that's multiple. That's why they call it polycystic ovaries. Whereas an ovarian cyst is oftentimes like they can be pretty benign and they happen pretty commonly for women, but they can also continue to grow and grow and grow until they either burst or become a problem. So they're two separate things. Ovarian cysts are usually a result of serious estrogen dominance. So is PCOS, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's more of like a metabolic condition, whereas I find that ovarian cysts are often directly due to estrogen dominance. So you want to start focusing on your body's elimination of estrogen, and if you're ovulating, making sure you're ovulating. But if you haven't already downloaded my metabolism like free training, I highly recommend doing that, because that'll kind of like get you started understanding all those little tips. Does lip filler, hyaluronic acid, have bad effect on health? Any injections are gonna come with a con, of course, because it's not just hyaluronic acid in those fillers. There's other things. And yeah, injected hyaluronic acid, there are some studies that tie it to some not so great things. So I would be very cautious injecting anything near my brain and my spinal cord and my nervous system. Hey Jess, temps pulses are on point, skin is clearing, hair is growing fast, warm hands and feet, still waiting for my period. Any additional herbs, steps to think about? That's awesome. I would personally, for me, I would just be patient and keep doing what I'm doing because all those improvements are amazing. It's probably only a matter of time. There are herbs that people use like Vitex. Sometimes people will use like Dong Quai. There is like a good herb book that you can get by Susan Weed on Amazon. I like her herbal stuff. Yeah, Susan Weed. She's a really good resource for herbs and in regards to women's health. So I highly recommend maybe one or two of her books. But she talks about different emmenagogues, which are herbs that can help kind of bring on a bleed. But remember, guys, trying to like force the body to bleed, as long as we, the goal is just to get that ovulation back. And then once we ovulate, an ovulation always either results in a pregnancy or a period. Always. So once we get that ovulation, a period will occur. It's just getting to that point, and sometimes it just takes some patience. And then if it doesn't come, you always want to reassess. Like, am I over-exercising? Am I pushing my body too hard in one regard? Am I not sleeping well enough? Is there maybe a source of stress in my life that's kind of always nagging on me? So that's just kind of one of those things where, and that's not to say like you're doing anything wrong, because you're probably doing everything right. It's just more about not necessarily trying to like force it. The body will do its thing in its due time most of the time. What school did you go to for FDNP? That's a functional diagnostic nutrition. So the school is actually called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And how would I figure out if I'm producing progesterone? Thank you. So you can either practice the fertility awareness method and take your temps and pulses. I have a free guide for that on my website. You can also visit the link in my Instagram bio. I teach you how to use temps and pulses. And then, remember, when we ovulate, our cervical mucus changes. We could also get a progesterone test. 5 to 7 days after ovulation, we should have adequate levels of progesterone. So there are multiple ways to kind of assess, and it's usually a good idea to get more data rather than less. And there's no like easy way to do it. I wish there was, but there's not. Good evening. Thanks for doing this. I have a couple questions. The last 3 months, I've gotten horrible migraines with the start of my period, no cramps or other symptoms. Also, anything to do for BO. When it comes to migraines, oftentimes they're due to estrogen dominance. They can also be due to blood sugar drops. So we particularly do need to be careful around our period, because our blood sugar does have a tendency to be very up and down. And so it's even more important when we're bleeding to support our blood sugar. So that would be something like, I personally always do a raw care. Whenever I get like a migraine or a headache, I used to get them every single month. I haven't got one in months, but when I do, I immediately go to the gas station or the store and get a Mexican Coca-Cola that's made with real cane sugar because of the caffeine and the sugar. And then I do a raw carrot, and I drink that Coke, eat that carrot. I've never not had that take my headache away. Never. It always works. And then for BO, BO can be a sign that estrogen is mobilizing, because with estrogen comes iron, and iron is almost always responsible for that like gross BO. But are you doing the raw carrot salad every day? That would be my first question. What is your advice for someone new to FN who is experiencing worsening acne? I'm worried, but hopeful it is detox. Yeah, have you gone through the last lesson of Module 2 yet? Just explaining that sometimes things do get a little bit worse before it gets better. In that lesson, I talk about the healing pounds, but I also talk about how some things, as you mobilize junk that has accumulated for years, it's not always like pretty. Like, you can almost picture it as like draining a boil. It's kind of worse at first for a second, but then it starts to actually get better. So many other women have experienced that. If you want some encouragement, I highly recommend utilizing the Facebook group and just searching and saying like acne experiences, or search posts for acne, or make a post and tell the girls and say, hey, did anyone else experience acne worsening? Because there's plenty of women in Fully Nourished who have experienced that, and eventually it's gotten better. It's just a little bit spotty at first, but make sure you are opening up those detox pathways. Raw carrot salad is an absolute must every single day. Should not be missed one day. Detox lemonade, highly recommended for at least the first couple of months. Sometimes activated charcoal can be very helpful a couple of times a week. And then vitamin E can be a very effective supplement for that as well. And then like the mushrooms and the bamboo shoots, those can be binders as well, but making sure we're moving our bowels fast enough and supporting our liver with enough protein and nutrients so that our body can take care of those toxins. What are some further steps someone can take for gut health beyond fully nourished? Probiotics, food. Well, if you've been eating pro-metabolic for 3 to 6 months, oftentimes your gut issues like greatly improve. You usually are like, I would say like at least 50 to 70% of your issues are resolved, if not a lot more. If at that point you need more support, that's when you dig deeper and you figure out what you need personally. That's an appropriate time for gut testing. That's an appropriate time for figuring out, like I like GI maps. I like Thrive, THRYVE, and then I like organic acid testing. Those are kind of like 3 tests that you can utilize to start digging a little bit deeper and seeing what you need to get to where you need to go. But 9 times out of 10, it's so important to first lay a metabolic foundation, because if your metabolism is trashed, your gut's going to be trashed. Like there's no way you can fix a gut when the metabolism is absolutely trashed. So that's what should always be focused on first, nourishment and minerals. And then if that truly doesn't fix things, which like 8 times out of 10, it does a lot for somebody, then that's when you start to explore the ecosystem. So from mouth to anus, what's going on and what needs to be resolved. Does the benefit in red light therapy come from the color mainly, or is it the wavelength or the heat or something else? I was thinking of using red Christmas lights in my bedroom. It has to do with a few things. So incandescent lights are similar to sunlight, and they mimic sunlight. And sunlight is not just beneficial because we make vitamin D when we get sunlight. The light wavelengths in them of themselves are de-stressing. So in long summer months, we produce more progesterone, we have less stress. There's something about summer, right? We feel so good in summer compared to winter, and that has a lot to do with the sun. And so incandescent lights, which do have red light, even though you can't visibly see it with your eyes, those are red light wavelengths, are beneficial in and of themselves. Now, adding like a red tint on the bulb can sometimes make it a little bit more soothing or a little bit better, but it doesn't have to do just with the color. It has to do more with the wavelengths and the type of light. So there are like LED lights that are red lights that are a higher nanometer, like 660 nanometers. Those have different benefits for the mitochondria. They help the mitochondria, they increase bioavailable copper and decrease iron. So those can have a beneficial effect on the metabolism too. But sometimes like it's not about just like the color, the red color, it's about the type of light as well. So I don't know if red Christmas lights would really do the same thing. Not saying they won't, but I'm not sure. Okay, sorry I lost myself. You guys know I at least do it 1 time per live. How long does it take you to fall asleep? I get in bed around 9:30, but sometimes I can't turn my brain off. Like 2 minutes. My head hits the pillow. I'm asleep. Now that has not always been the case. I am an overthinker. I'm someone, you guys know, like I own a business. I have a trillion things on my plate, I'm constantly creating content. I have 1,000 things behind the scenes that you guys don't see. I used to be someone that was an overthinker, can't turn my brain off. That's an adrenaline response. That's when you're stuck in fight or flight, and you got to get out of that fight or flight zone with a shit ton of sugar. So when I'm in that situation, like this is why right before I go to bed, literally 10 minutes before I go to bed, I eat a big bowl of ice cream with glycine added. Like milk, a big glass of milk with simple syrup works really well, or raw honey. Something that's going to calm my nervous system down. We also need to remind ourselves, this is where, we have some responsibility to ourselves, that everything will be waiting for us tomorrow. Like, who gives a crap? Like, if I think about it now or in the morning. If you have a really hard time, like you're afraid you're going to forget something, have an open notebook by your bed and write it down and then move on. Don't marinate on things because that's just going to keep you in this fight or flight loop. But yeah, it shouldn't take us more than like 5 or 10 minutes to fall asleep. If we're like laying there just tossing, turning, our brain's like racing, we need to go get some sugar ASAP. Best sources of protein, eggs, dairy. Let's see, eggs, dairy, which goes for like milk, cheese, yogurt, cottage cheese, grass-fed beef. I like ruminant animals, so beef, lamb, bison, and then shellfish, whitefish, organ meats. Those are kind of my favorite sources. If your luteal phase is short, would supplementing progesterone help? A lot of times it does. Yeah, if we have a short luteal phase, it's usually because, what brings on our period is the drop in progesterone. So as the corpus luteum gets absorbed by the body, progesterone levels plummet, and then that induces our bleed or our period. Just had my first period in 6 months. Yay! If I keep resting and eating fully nourished, do I have a good chance of having normal cycles from now on? I don't want to say yes or no, but from what I've seen with many women, usually, as long as we are continuing to do what we are doing and like keeping that consistently, usually after about 3 to 6 cycles, we're kind of like in the clear. Now, some women do have a tendency to just lose their periods under stress, but some women, like once they have regained them and they know they're taking those nourishment principles going forward and they never push their body quite like they did before again, they keep their periods. So that's very exciting. Diagnosed fructose malabsorption 9 years ago, healed SIBO and started eating FN 3 months ago and slowly introducing fruits. I felt great eating fruit, but my acne gets worse. Should I keep eating fruit? We need to ask ourselves like why we have fructose malabsorption. Oftentimes it's because of SIBO. So, you've gotten rid of your SIBO. Oftentimes it's not a fructose issue unless we have a hard time making those enzymes. So sometimes like supplementing those disaccharidases or those enzymes that break down specific sugars can be helpful because oftentimes fructose can turn into glucose in the gut. So that's a possibility. The gut can convert fructose to glucose if it wants to. So I would personally, I would be playing around with certain things. I would not just take that at face value. I would see what fruits are giving me problems. Do cooked fruits give me the same problems? What about juices? What about honey? I'd be experimenting to kind of boil it down because to me, someone telling me I don't absorb fructose, I'm like, I want to know more. That gives me no answers whatsoever. But good job doing healing SIBO because SIBO is really hard to get rid of. Also had a 14-day luteal phase, so I think it was a good ovulation. That's awesome. That's super awesome. I'm curious what your thoughts are on taking CBD oil sublingually. I struggle with anxiety and it has helped in the past, but it does make me very tired. It's a PUFA, so it is similar. I believe it's immunosuppressive, so helps in the short term, causing problems in the long term. I would be very curious about how it's affecting my metabolism. Oftentimes when I've used CBD in the past just as an experiment because you guys know I like to experiment on myself. My temps always go down, which shows me it's having a negative impact on my metabolism. If you had to choose between filtering hard water and filtering chloramine, which is more important for balanced hormones? It just depends. I think it's really important to make an informed choice based on what type of water in your what your water is in the area. So for example, if the hard water has a ton of iron and you have a ton of farms near you where they're spraying a ton of glyphosate, I would be, wanting a harder filter. Chloramines are one of those things which are helpful, but I don't think they're the first priority. That would be a chlorine filter. Chlorine filters will filter chloramines, but there are filters that sometimes do both. So I would do a little bit more research on the filters that you're looking at. Hi, Jess. How are you? Hey, Sandy. Sandy is a OG Fully Nourished student. She was one of, I think, our first 100 students. Do you have tips for food ideas when struggling with ulcers? Doctor is advising to cut out food that I know I need metabolically speaking, hoping for inspiration. Thanks. So ulcers, interestingly enough, like a lot of times they have to do with sometimes H. pylori can be involved, which is a bacteria in the stomach. So, looking at things like mastic gum, slippery elm, marshmallow root, those things that are kind of soothing, high dose gelatin, seeing if those kind of like soothe. And then I would stay away from like coffee, things that are acidic, that are super acidic. So for example, like switching OJ to maybe like apple juice or grape juice, just something that's a little less acidic. I know the no coffee thing is hard, but sometimes just like letting yourself like heal a little bit can be very helpful. And then doing things that are going to really soothe the lining of the digestive tract. I've been eating FN for 3 months and feeling so much better. That's so exciting, Jenny. Less ovarian pain throughout the month, but I did have another cyst rupture. Any tips for shrinking cysts? Just getting to the bottom of why ovarian cysts are occurring, which is oftentimes estrogen dominance. So it sometimes can take a while for them to grow and burst. It's not just like it's happening right then and there. It can sometimes happen for a while, but focusing on the things that are going to help with estrogen. So raw carrot salad, vitamin E, sometimes castor oil packs can help. Even like detox lemonade, making sure you're getting enough protein. Even the things that are going to support liver, like vitamin K2, and then minerals like magnesium, potassium, even getting enough sodium. It takes time, guys, especially if you're someone that has struggled with estrogen dominance. A lot of times all these symptoms are connected. And as we deal with the underlying issues, oftentimes things do start to resolve over time. Is it okay to take vitamin K and vitamin E together, or do they counteract each other? I always take them together just with a fatty meal. What do you feed Sam? I feed him raw. Right now I purchased him a raw grind. That's not perfect. She like pre-mixes the raw grind for him. The only thing I don't like is that she adds a little cod liver oil. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit, and that bothers me. But I'm just not in a place right now where I want to do his meals. I don't have a lot of good sources, and it's already expensive as it is because he eats 2 pounds per meal twice a day. He's a big dog. He's like 120 pounds. So I feed him like a ground raw that comes in like patties, and it's easy for me because then I can just defrost 2 patties, give him 2 patties. I buy like a big pack of chicken legs at Costco and just feed him like a drumstick, and then I give him a pastured egg and some raw carrot, and that's every meal. He seems to love that. And then for snacks, I give him freeze-dried liver, and I'll occasionally give him like bowl of milk or raw cheese. He doesn't do well with cooked or anything pasteurized, but I'll give him like little raw treats here and there. But yeah, that's what I feed him pretty much almost every meal. Hi, Jess. Thanks for being here with us. Of course. I'm taking 3 methods of magnesium: chloride spray, bicarbonate, liquid, and glycinate supplements. How do I know how much to take between the 3 types? Just remember that like we don't absorb everything that we take. So in regards to like magnesium spray, for example, we're not going to absorb everything that we're putting on. There's no way to really like know for sure, but because you're taking all 3, it's probably a good idea to practice a little bit more like caution, I guess I would say, like just being a little bit not like just pounding magnesium, because a lot of people make that mistake of just doing, it's never enough, and then they displace potassium or sodium. So, getting like 500 milligrams a day, I think for me is a good goal. Sometimes people will say like half your body weight in milligrams or 5 times your body weight in milligrams. That's like a popular one right now. I think it's just really about finding what works for us. Like I personally do like 20 sprays on my abdomen, probably like 4 tablespoons of bicarbonate per day, and then maybe like 100 to 200 milligrams of glycinate. I kind of play around with it. So just kind of figure out what works for you. Would you say children, specifically toddlers, benefit from a fully nourished lifestyle as well? Of course they do. They need lots of nutrients, lots of bioavailable protein, tons of carbohydrates, tons of sugar. there's a reason why they always are wanting sugary things. It's not because they're little demons. It's because they're actually needing sugar. And they, of course, need those high quality fat-soluble vitamins. There's a reason why kids don't like to eat broccoli until you force feed it to them. They can taste the anti-nutrients in those plants. So I think that is really fun. It's kind of an honor to be around kids. I don't have kids, but it's kind of an honor to be around toddlers because they intuitively know exactly what they need, and they will tell you. They will tell you. If it's not with their words, it's with their emotions. So I do believe that. Have you seen or believe? And I have a friend, my niece, she does eat pro-metabolically, and she does really, really well on it. Have you seen or believe in any case a person would not tolerate high quality meat, dairy? Yeah, if their stomach acid is low or they have poor digestive function. But in that case, it has nothing to do with the meat or the dairy and everything to do with their gut. And at that point, you need to focus on restoring that. Digestive bitters, sometimes ginger tea can help. Diluted apple cider vinegar, high dose gelatin, those can all be effective strategies. And then if that's not working, maybe digging a little deeper, trying digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid with pepsin, that kind of stuff. It's usually a digestion issue and not really a meat dairy issue. My skin is dull and greasy with uneven coloration and big pores. Bleh. Any suggestions beyond staying fully nourished? Just giving it time. Big pores often can be a sign of like insulin resistance or blood sugar issues or estrogen dominance. I know that over time, like my skin has completely changed. I had horrible skin when I was like 17, 18, 19, 20, even like early 20s, like worse skin than I have now. I look at myself and I looked older then than I do now, in just like regards to like the dullness and things. Like my skin now is very glowy and my pores are very small. Some things that I've seen help with my skin are, I like to use hyaluronic acid occasionally. I use a lot of squalene oil. I use cocoa butter, shea butter, saturated fats on my skin. And I don't do a lot of weird ingredients, and no poof is in my skincare. I use solely Cosma Beauty and Healthy Hair Forever. Between their two products, I find that they're amazing. And Healthy Hair Forever, I only started using her stuff like 3 weeks ago, but I swear her facial cleanser, the one called, I think it's called Clear, is so amazing. I'm not being paid to say this. I've never used a cleanser that I like because I always have dry skin. And I ordered that, paid for it with my own money. Like she didn't send it to me for free. And that is the best cleanser I've ever used. Super hydrating and like makes my pores invisible, which I've never had because like as you said, like I have kind of like larger pores as well. But it can definitely take time, the uneven coloration often has a lot to do with hormones. Other than oysters, beef liver, and chlorophyll, what other foods are rich in copper? Whole foods vitamin C, so like camu berry, acerola cherry, like those types of things, or just regular like cherries, red peppers, papaya, citrus fruits, obviously. What else is high in copper? Really like any kind of mollusk, so not just oysters, but mussels and clams and things like that as well. But yeah, those are kind of the main ones, like organ meats, mollusks, and whole foods vitamin C. Hi, Jess. Any ideas why I would have a horrible reaction to MCT oil? High heart rate, rashes, anxiety. It's super antifungal, so if you have a lot of fungus, then it's going to cause a lot of die-off. If taking activated charcoal after you have that reaction fixes the reaction, then you know it's some type of like endotoxin overload or fungus. Like this is called Herxheimer's reaction or die-off oftentimes, because MCT oil is really rich in caprylic acid, and caprylic acid is a known antifungal. It's used by a lot of like functional medicine people, practitioners. I've used it in the past to deal with fungal issues. I've been supplementing with bioidentical progesterone and getting my progesterone checked monthly on peak day 7. Can you still confirm ovulation with progesterone blood tests when supplementing? Not really, because it's bioidentical, so the blood test will pick it up. That's why it's better to confirm with temping first before you start supplementing. That's the only way to really confirm when you're supplementing bioidentical progesterone is wait for the temp to spike naturally before starting supplementation. If you're trying to really get a progesterone, a positive ovulation. What is the importance of adrenal cocktail, and can you drink it right before bed? I don't see why not. Sometimes it's stimulating for some people. The importance of the adrenal cocktail is to calm your body down. So it has all the, I have a post on it on my feed, but it contains carbohydrates, protein, and fat to balance blood sugar. And then it also has minerals to support the adrenals. And then, of course, orange juice is really rich in vitamin C, which is needed to also calm the adrenals down as well. Last time I asked about essential oils, but would like to clarify if possible. So diffusing is all right, but putting them on skin constantly should be avoided. Does diffusing affect children as well? Yeah, there are a lot of essential oils that should not be used around children at all, especially like the more respiratory affecting oils like rosemary, eucalyptus, and then even like cloves, cinnamon, those types of things can be a little bit too invigorating for children of certain ages. You can Google this, like, are essential oils safe for children? And there will be, or what essential oils aren't safe for children? And there are plenty of blog articles of actual aromatherapists explaining why certain oils aren't safe for kids under 10, and then like under 5, and then under 3. It's because their lungs aren't completely developed, and these high respiratory oils that cause a lot of distress on the respiratory system, they can't handle it. So that goes across the board. Diffusing, applying on their skin, anything shouldn't be used in their vicinity at all. I personally wouldn't even have the oils in the house. That's just my personal approach to it, because they can be deadly. And then when it comes to diffusing, like if you're diffusing estrogenic essential oils all the time, like let's say lavender or tea tree, you're still going to be affected. It would be like breathing in an endocrine disrupting chemical all day long. So just be cautious and aware of it. Again, I don't stress about details, but I would want to know if I was diffusing something that somebody told me was calming all day and I was causing myself to become super estrogen dominant. So that's just me. But yeah, aromatherapy is powerful because it is something that that is affecting us on a biochemical level. Not as much as applying it, but it still does affect us. So it's not something to be afraid of. Just be cautious of it and be informed. Don't let someone that's a part of an MLM educate you. Get books that are written by aromatherapists. This is why I don't support MLMs. I only support plant therapy, because plant therapy, first of all, doesn't overcharge on their oils. And second of all, the guy that runs it knows his you-know-what and actually labels which oils are kid-safe and also makes kid-safe blends. Would your liver detox protocols affect detoxing a medication faster? It's possible. You know, anytime you're supporting the liver is going to work faster. And what about taking oregano essential oil and veggie cap to combat illness? I don't necessarily, it just depends on how the oregano is farmed. I personally wouldn't take a lot of oregano essential oil unless it was oreganol, which is wild oregano. There's a difference between farmed oregano and wild oregano. Wild oregano doesn't have high amount of a certain compound that's toxic to the brain, whereas farmed oregano does. But if it's like just for a couple of days, I personally wouldn't stress about it, but I would never take just regular oregano oil all winter long, because that will cross the blood-brain barrier. What would you say the top 5 things you would do to heal your gut? Stop eating nuts, seeds, beans, grains, and raw vegetables and cruciferous vegetables. And that's pretty much it, because that'll fix my issues. Just kidding, but it probably would. Do high-dose gelatin, like bone broth, gelatin gummies. I would never eat meat without eating something that has gelatin in it. I would always eat them together. I think that cutting gluten, I already included that in grains, but making a particular note about cutting gluten is very effective. And then yeah, I think those are really the three things. If that doesn't work, then at that and doing the raw carrot salad every day doesn't work, then at that point you would probably explore a deeper issue. But I think those are usually the things that help most people. In addition to switching out all your polyunsaturated fatty acids or plant fats with saturated fats like coconut oil, ghee, grass-fed butter. So I'll review. Cutting all anti-nutrients, nuts and seeds, beans, grains, raw vegetables, and cruciferous vegetables. What did I say next? Oh, shoot. Polyunsaturated fats, switch them out for saturated. Do your raw carrot salad every single day, high dose gelatin, and bone broth. And that's pretty much what I would do. I'm 6 months pro-metabolic and I'm starting to see baby hairs on my head. Yay. The unwanted facial hairs don't seem to be getting better, even maybe a little worse. Is this normal during healing? It can be, just depending on your context and where you're coming from. If you've always been progesterone deficient, this is some time to kind of explore, like, am I ovulating? How long are my luteal phases lasting from ovulation up until menstruation? If they're lasting, less than 8 days or less than 10 days sometimes, like, we really want them lasting 11 to 14 days. We want to make sure we're making enough progesterone, because that's going to be that only thing that really counteracts the hormones that can drive hirsutism. We also want to be very particular, like, how are we doing on balancing our blood sugar and insulin sensitivity? Do we need to focus a little bit more on things that make us insulin sensitive, like magnesium, sodium, potassium? How's our temps and pulses? Because thyroid is going to make sure we're insulin sensitive. Because, what are going to be the things that drive hirsutism or that abnormal hair growth? It's either going to be like high androgens, which is caused by hyperinsulinemia. High estrogen can be a cause of it. And then high prolactin, which is a stress hormone, high DHEA, which is also usually high when under stress. So those are kind of like, we want to kind of be dealing with our stress, our blood sugar, and making sure we have that progesterone, because that's the only hormone powerful enough to counteract the effects of those other hormones. I ran out of liver tablets for a few days, and day 14 was approaching, and I started spotting heavily, then started the liver back up and stopped. Why is this? It really does support the liver. It's rich in B vitamins, it's rich in copper, and those are things that help our bodies detoxify estrogen a lot. There's a reason why I encourage all fully nourished students to get some liver in every week, or to, get about 4 ounces a weekend, is because those nutrients are helping you move estrogen out of the body properly. Every time I try to lower my fat, I feel terrible, but so much of the pro-metabolic community is oriented towards lower fat. What do you have to say about this? You already know the answer to this question. Eat as much fat as your body needs. If that's 50% fat, as long as you're doing high quality fat, who cares? Don't let anyone determine what your body needs. Anything under 80 makes me feel miserable, but I'm still overweight after 8 months and all in after 3 years of yo-yo dieting. It's going to take time, and going low fat is not the only way to lose weight. If you need to cut your carbs a little bit, as long as you're getting enough in a day, that's okay. Like I always say, with weight loss, strength training is the first thing that should be added in if you can tolerate it. And if that is not something that you can tolerate, then at that point, maybe cutting calories as a whole by like 100 calories or something like that, to see if that helps. But I personally would listen to my body, and about 80 grams is correct. I really wouldn't go lower than that. What is the reason behind a sudden lower appetite? Could it be stress, or that I'm just not thinking about food all the time because my blood sugar is balanced? It could be either. Either is a possibility, as long as you're eating enough and you don't have no appetite. I think appetites kind of will wane and be stronger. It can be seasonal. It can be, like you said, your stress load. It can be a lot of factors. I've noticed since, and I'm going to go back to Kennedy's question just for a second. I have a lot of people, and I don't know how overweight you are. I know you said you feel kind of overweight. I have people that have told me, who are overweight or even obese, that eating under a certain amount of fat makes them feel awful. And remember that when you're overweight or you have a lot of fat stored in your tissues, a lot of that fat is polyunsaturated because your body tends to use saturated fats right away. And so when you're moving polyunsaturated fats out, because as we speed up our metabolism, we do start to move those polyunsaturated fatty acids, we want enough saturated fat to kind of balance out those polyunsaturated fats or counteract the inflammatory effects of them. So keeping that in mind, like your body is so much wiser than you. And even if you don't know the science behind it, listen to your body because your body is smart and it's telling you that for a reason. And there is usually science behind it. It's just a matter of if somebody knows the science or knows where to, how to point you in the right direction. I've noticed since starting to eat pro-metabolic diet that I get super out of breath during workouts. I lift weights with lots of rest between sets. Do you think there's any connection to my change in eating? It's possible. A lot of times when people lower their stress hormones, they start to actually see the effects of what the stress hormones have done to them over time. Do you sip on carbs in intra-workout? It's so important to sip on carbs intra-workout. If you're not doing that, do it because that is something that needs to happen, especially if you lift weights a lot or you lift weights more than like 2 times a week. But I think it's important to do all the time. And potassium and sodium are important. See, remember, with raising our metabolism comes responsibility. The faster our metabolism works, the more nutrients we need. And, that goes for minerals, that goes for fat-soluble vitamins. And a lot of people don't realize this. And so they're like, oh, I'm feeling worse. And I'm like, are you increasing your mineral intake, increasing your carbohydrate intake, increasing your intake to now meet this new metabolism that you've created? And sometimes people who have always been active have never experienced that because they've never experienced an increased metabolism and an increased need for nutrients. Is there anything to counteract iron in beef liver besides milk or coffee? Does gelatin help? Black tea, green tea, like teas in general. I'm trying to think of what else. I don't know about gelatin, but yeah, anything that has like tannins is going to bind to the iron. But yeah, there's not a lot that's going to counteract it besides like milk, coffee, tea, like green tea or black tea. Also, would love to see more content about what you eat in a day. Yeah, of course. I try to post on Instagram. I usually eat pretty similarly every day, so that's why it's like kind of boring, but I'm always happy to share. How do you argue with people who claim that fasting, etc., is creating metabolic flexibility? I roll. I'm all in eating pro-metabolically, but my husband loves to argue with me about metabolic flexibility. It's funny because people love to throw that term around like they know what the hell they're talking about, and they don't know what they're talking about. When they're saying metabolic flexibility, it's this idea that you should be able to like burn fat and burn carbs, like, and switch back and forth. But that's like not how our biology is like really supposed to work. Our body switches to burning fat if it's necessary. It's a backup system. Just like our body can turn protein into glucose, that's a backup system as well. Your body prefers running on glucose, but it can use its backup system. It will switch to its backup system if it needs to. Do you want to force it to do that constantly back and forth? That's like your electricity goes out and you switch on your backup generator, and then your electricity comes back on, and then your electricity goes back on, you turn on your backup generator. It just makes no sense. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, I don't get it. Just keep your electricity on, and if occasionally your electricity goes out, you have the backup generator there to turn on if you need it. But why are you constantly forcing an already stressed out body in a super stressful modern age to just go back and forth and back and forth? Like, I just don't get it. But yeah, metabolic flexibility is not a thing. And remember, guys, to burn fat, you need to be insulin resistant. So people that are burning fat as fuel are super insulin resistant. If they went and drank a big gulp right now, they would not be able to do anything with that sugar because they're insulin resistant right now. So it's just really interesting to me, whereas like I would prefer to have a lot of insulin sensitivity, use sugar very well, and then if I need to jump into ketosis for whatever reason, I can do that no problem, but I would want to hop back into glucose burning. Whereas these people that are constantly eating like these low carb diets with intermittent fasting, they're so insulin resistant that when they do eat carbs, they feel like crap because they can't use them. Would you suggest taking Dissolvedol before or after taking raw liver to ensure digestibility? It just depends. So if you're trying to use proteolytic enzymes or systemic enzymes to their full benefit, they should be taken on a completely empty stomach. Like I think probably an hour away from anything else, or they're just going to act like digestive enzymes. They're not going to do their job, which is go in and dissolve scar tissue and fibrosis. There's not a problem. I just think that systemic enzymes are kind of expensive to use as digestive enzymes. A lot of the markers of a healthy metabolism have been improving since starting this way of eating. But I still have to pee so much during the day. I'm guessing it's mineral related. Any tips on addressing it? A lot of times peeing a lot is adrenaline related. So are you in a fight or flight response? Do you have other signs of being in fight or flight or high adrenaline state? A lot of times this can be mental, and I don't mean like mental, but I mean like we're constantly overthinking everything. Our brain's going like this, and we need to really practice self-awareness and, change our thought process. If that's not enough, then yeah, we want to focus on minerals, coconut water, juices, stuff like that, broths. But if that's not enough, sometimes it has more to do with like hormones and stress. And we want to kind of explore that. Thoughts on the supplement Monolaurin? I like Monolaurin. I use it for certain applications, breaking down biofilms. It's super fungal, antiviral, antibacterial, those types of things. It can come in handy during gut protocols, things like that. For some people though, it can cause severe herxemers, severe die-off. So it's good to start with only like a few pellets. What's a normal length for the follicular phase? I'm ovulating around day 11, day 12. Honestly, a follicular phase, length doesn't necessarily matter as long as we're getting a really long luteal phase, like that good 11 to 14 day range. So if we're having like a really short cycle, that might be abnormal. But if we're getting like a really good ovulation that's keeping us, with progesterone for 11 to 14 days, then some women just end up ovulating around day 11 or day 12. If you don't take a vitamin E supplement, is there a good way to get it from foods, even though you should reduce PUFAs? Is wheat germ or sunflower oil for vitamin E okay, or do you think everyone should take a supplement? It just depends. Like wheat germ can be a good source. Sunflower oil, I probably wouldn't do. I might do like a high quality wheat germ oil. That would probably be preferential, even though it's full of PUFAs. And then red palm oil can be a pretty adequate source of vitamin E. Every time I try to incorporate grains back in, I get inflammation in my body and headaches, anxiety. Is this a sign I'm not completely healed? Or is it possible that grains don't work with me? Well, what type of grains are we talking about? Are we talking about properly soaked, sprouted, prepared? Are we diving straight into gluten-containing grains? Like, I need some context here. A lot of times it's just that we're not in a place where we can handle them quite yet. Our gut is still a problematic ecosystem that needs further restoration. But yeah, usually most people can handle some grains, but how they're prepared is totally important. If they're processed grains, maybe it's time to try like some buckwheat or some really well cooked first that soaked and then cooked rice, experimenting with different grains that are cooked really, really well. And remember, guys, when you're reincorporating something you haven't eaten for a long time or you don't do well on, it should always start a bite or a sip at a time. It should never be like, oh, I'm going to have a huge portion and serving of it. And then you eat it and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like crap. It's like, no wonder. Grains are full of prebiotics that feed specific bacteria in the gut. And if you just eat a ton all at once, I would be taking like a prebiotic supplement and just chugging the whole thing. Like it's going to feel really uncomfortable. So whenever you're incorporating anything that has possible prebiotics, it should always be done, like I said, a bite or a sip at a time. This goes for dairy. This can go for grains. This can go for beans. There are some people that just don't do well on grains though. But if we can't digest certain things, at least occasionally, we still have some work to do. I had to go on antibiotics for a UTI. Should I wait to take probiotics until done with antibiotics? Any suggestions to help microbiome after antibiotics? It's just one of those things where usually, I mean, there's a few research studies that show like we don't want to take probiotics until after antibiotics, but then there are some people that take them while. I think it's just a personal preference. But yeah, just eating right, because when we take an antibiotic, we create space. So we're wiping out a third of our microbiome. And once we're done with the antibiotic, the space that was created is going to be filled. Now, who fills it is going to be determined by you and what you eat, because only certain bacteria eat certain things. So I would be focused on making sure my beneficial bifido and good bacteria grow back more than the not so great bacteria. And I would be eating lots of high quality root vegetables, fruits, squashes, maybe some cooked vegetables. I really like to use apple pectin, and then like a high quality spore-based probiotic. That's kind of my favorite way to go about it. Since eating pro-metabolic, I notice I don't sleep as well at night, and I wake up way more to pee than before. I eat around 30 to 60 minutes before bed, and a good balance of protein, carbs, and fats. Any ideas why? Are you eating the same amount of calories that you ate before? Did you go too high carb too fast, and you're not tolerating that much carbs, and you actually need to eat more fats? Are you, what foods are you eating before bed? Do you need to maybe eat something different? Those are all things that I would look into, because when we pee during the night, that's usually a sign of that our stress, we have stress, our adrenaline is up. If you had filler in the past, would it be worth it to get it dissolved, or just wait it till it dissolves naturally? I don't really know a lot about filler, so I don't know what even is in it, honestly. I can only imagine how much they care about our health. But I don't know. I don't know what's better. Like, how do they actually dissolve it? Would be my question. Is it like chemically dissolved? So I don't know enough to ask the right questions, but I would determine the things that's going to be least harmful to me. Struggling to lose belly fat, any advice? Lower your stress and start weight training. That's usually like the two things that work the best. I'm having histamine symptoms from smells such as Indian curries. Is there something I can do? Support the liver. If we're sensitive to any smells, perfumes, candles, fragrances, anything like that, we need to support our liver. What would be possible reasons that a pregnancy would go over 40 weeks? I know after period, conventional docs seek to induce labor. Well, the human gestational period is anywhere from, I should say gestation period, is anywhere from 40 to 42 weeks. So no one's been pregnant forever. So that would be my answer. If someone tried to induce my labor, I'd be like, take a gel pill. Recently gave blood donations and have more issues. Dizzy in the morning, more histamine reactions. Is there something I can do? Focus on copper. Blood donations are not for everyone, especially if they're already struggling with like electrolyte imbalances or already super depleted, because when we give blood, yeah, we're giving iron, but we're also giving copper, and we're also giving lots of electrolytes like sodium, potassium, magnesium, all that kind of stuff. So we need to build that back up, electrolytes back up. Is an 11-day luteal phase a good ovulation? Depends. Are you feeling like you have great signs of high progesterone, or do you feel still kind of estrogen dominant? It just depends. It's all about context. It's all about a person. But usually around 11 to 14 days is a good idea. Is the EWG a trusted method to verify cosmetic safety? I don't rely on anything 100%. If I am giving somebody else permission to tell me if something's okay, I am now taking my health and putting it into somebody else's hands. I don't trust anything that anybody else makes unless I trust that person. But most people or most companies, I don't trust them because they like to use cheap stuff. That's how you make a profit. And so I look on the EWG. But then I also look at those ingredients. And you can also manually use the EWG. Instead of putting a product in there, you can actually type in the individual ingredients in the product and look at each individual ingredient. And oftentimes that's going to be a little bit more, show a little bit more clarity. But I don't really like cosmetic products in general because they're full of PUFAs, and most of them at least. And it's just such an unregulated industry. And then Beauty Counter, they'll say like, oh, we do beauty cleaner. Some of their products are not even clean at all. So, like I would never touch them on my face. So it's just like, I don't really trust a lot of cosmetic companies. I use the bare minimum amount of makeup. Unfortunately, I like makeup. It's super fun, but sadly, it's just so toxic. Hi, Jess. My temps are starting to rise. My question is that my FAM charts look a little crazy right now. Do you think this may be my thyroid metabolism starting to heal? That's so awesome that temps are starting to rise. Yeah, sometimes, it depends each day. So usually the day before the temps kind of move around is determining what your temps the next day are. So I found that this is the case for a lot of my clients, students, and myself, is what I did the day before totally affects my temps the next day. So what did I eat for my bedtime snack? Did I eat enough all day long? How stressed was I? Did I get good exercise? Did I over push it on my exercise? Did I get in a fight with somebody? What happened? And that's going to affect the following day. Usually things start to balance out as things start to balance out. You mentioned progesterone test strips to figure out levels of progesterone. Do you have any kind you recommend? I've never really talked about progesterone test strips. I'm talking about a progesterone blood test. I don't think that there's really accurate progesterone test strips out there. The only one that I know of is Prove, Proov, and everyone, has a different feedback regarding them. The reviews don't look that good, and they are pretty expensive. So I wouldn't trust them personally, but yeah, it's sometimes like the only over-the-counter option we have. I wish there was a better over-the-counter option, like maybe like a finger prick test or something like that. Let me start with saying thank you for being you and doing what you do. Thank you, Amber. I had blood work done recently, revealed low white blood cell count. Any idea what would cause low WBC? Immune system issues, like what's going on with your immune system. That would be like my question. Matt Blackburn says chlorophyll is a waste of time and a poor source of copper. Why do you recommend chlorophyll for the detox lemonade? Just curious. Oh, because Matt Blackburn is God. Got it. I don't always agree with everything Matt says. I respect him. I think he teaches me a ton of stuff, but I've used chlorophyll detox lemonades for a very long time, and I do think that they can be an effective support for detoxification. Are they the only source of copper you should be getting? No, but there's other benefits to chlorophyll besides the copper. The enzymes in it can support your liver's own detoxification. The green pigments can help shift the microbiota. So there are other reasons why I use chlorophyll. And if I explained why I do everything that I do, Fully Nourished would go from a 10-hour program to like a 50-hour program. So I think about everything very thoroughly before I recommend it to everyone. I take my job incredibly serious. To me, it's a tremendous responsibility, and I don't just recommend things nilly-willy. So I like chlorophyll. I continue to like chlorophyll. It makes a huge difference in people's skin, makes a huge difference in people's liver function, and the results speak for themselves. Had HTMA done recently and found out I'm slow metabolizer 1. Welcome to the club of 80% of the whole population. Wondering is this type true to you always, or once you address mineral imbalances, could your metabolism type change? It changes all the time. It's not really something to get that caught up on because, yeah, they're taking your calcium to phosphorus ratio, and that's how they're determining your metabolism type. So as your calcium to phosphorus ratio changes, so will your metabolism type. It's not really that important. It's more about creating balance amongst your minerals. I started eating pro-metabolic, and my last period was 2 weeks long and very heavy clotting. Is there anything I can do to shorten it? Well, I talk about in both Mend Your Cycle and Fully Nourished how some women do experience detox periods when you start to mobilize estrogen. The first couple of periods can be really, really rough as we start to mobilize estrogen out of the body. It's kind of a bummer, but it usually balances out after a couple of cycles. This is not always a bad sign. It can sometimes be a good sign. If it continues and doesn't improve, then at that point we need to reassess what we're doing. But there are many women who have experienced these kind of detox periods. I've experienced detox periods with estrogen. Now, there are things we can do to support our body's elimination of estrogen: raw carrot salad, vitamin E. Some women like to do castor oil packs. Some women like to do like cooked greens, some of those helpful fibers like cooked mushrooms or bamboo shoots to help the body bind and carry estrogen. For some people who have like extreme symptoms, doing some activated charcoal a couple times a week, detox lemonade, and then just continuing to eat plenty of protein, plenty of carbs, plenty of those high quality fats, and usually those things improve. Hi, my boyfriend, gosh, it skipped again. I did it again. Sometimes I'm just like, why did I do this? Okay, let's see. I know it was somebody named Alyssa. Where are you? There it is. Hi, my boyfriend started eating pro-metabolic with me in September. He has been waking up really snotty and has such an itchy scalp. You think he is detoxing? What can I have him do? Sounds like fungus. I mean, I don't know, but has he had fungal issues in the past? Like, does he have fungus? That would be something to explore. There are, and like for fungus, it's kind of important to make sure you're eating enough copper, and then, looking to improve like gut health as a whole. So sometimes spore-based probiotics can help. Sometimes like, antifungal compounds like SF722 by Thorne, things like that. Just trying to determine like what it is. Is it gut related? It's kind of important to start to pinpoint like what's maybe causing the issue. There are certain times when I eat a meal and very shortly afterwards, within an hour, I feel both full and hungry. I notice that I'm not getting enough food from that meal. What could this be? Are you eating too much carbs in relationship to protein or fat? I would try a little bit more protein and fat, a little less carbs, maybe try a little bit more fiber at meals. So, I like to hate on cruciferous vegetables, but I don't think that they're really bad, especially if you're doing like a couple stalks of like really well cooked cauliflower or broccoli or something like that. I should say florets, not stalks, or like some well cooked greens. Experiment around a little bit. Some people feel a little bit more satiated with more fiber, and fiber is not necessarily the devil. It just depends on your context. So some people need more fiber. Some people need a little less if their metabolic system is wrecked or their metabolism is wrecked. So I would experiment around. There's no right way to eat in the sense of if what you're doing is not working for you, don't try to like force it. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. Try some other things. And if, you're trying to do what works for someone else, but it's not working for you, just shift some things and see how it goes. What school would you recommend for nutritionists that are online based? I don't really necessarily know of any like great nutritionist schools. You kind of have to take the career you've been given and do the best with it. All of my knowledge really comes from like personal research. I don't really think I learned a lot of this in school. But if I was going to take something, I'd probably take like the NTA or NTP training. I think that's probably the closest to the truth. They're just kind of carb haters over there, but they're pretty Weston A. Price, which is more animal-based than most. My GI map and blood work showed SIBO, hypothyroid, sluggish liver, and pre-diabetic A1C. My doc said the blood sugar issue was separate from the other and wants me to intermittent fast. Advice seems wrong. I would just, listen to your intuition. Intermittent fasting doesn't really do much for stress and SIBO and stuff like that. It can sometimes temporarily make you feel better, but if you're hypothyroid and you have a sluggish liver, like starving yourself of glucose is not always a great idea. But I'm not a doctor, and so, you kind of need to use your own discretion and trust your gut there. I'm not going to tell you to not do what your doctor said to do. But I encourage you to just, trust your gut and do your own research, as I think we've all done. If someone doesn't have access to oysters or other shellfish, is there another fish or another food you would suggest for zinc? You can buy oyster extract if you're willing to do that. Like, that's a supplement that is available if you can't get access to it. Because like things like grass-fed beef and grass-fed liver, they have zinc in them. It's just really nice to get that really concentrated source from like shellfish. What should I watch out for when buying a K2 supplement? And what's the best time and frequency to take it? You're just looking for something that has like MK4 and MK7 and doesn't have a lot of fillers. And it just depends. I mean, a lot of vitamin K2 supplements are very low dose, like 100 micrograms. And I like to personally take 1 milligram, not every day, but when I take it, which is probably like 4 times a week, I take around 1 milligram. It's a fat soluble vitamin, so it does store in your tissues. You don't want to like overload yourself with fat soluble vitamins. But yeah, I just look for something that has MK4, MK7, and I just take them with fatty meals. Why do you think the alternative health community believes sugar causes cancer? Because they don't actually read science. They don't understand biology at all. It's crazy. Thank you for answering all these questions, by the way, of course. And also it's like really easy to blame sugar for problems, even though like probably the least offensive thing in a ho-ho is the sugar. There's not even sugar in processed foods. It's high fructose corn syrup, which guess what? Makes the iron in that food overload your liver. So high fructose corn syrup actually, makes iron issues that much worse. It magnifies them. I was looking for the right word. Magnifies iron issues. Most of this processed crap is filled with these fortified wheat products and polyunsaturated fats. And so we have high fructose corn syrup, PUFAs, and iron. And very rarely do you find real cane sugar in anything. I actually make a game of it. When I'm at Costco or Sprouts or wherever I'm at the grocery store, I look at every processed food item that I'm curious about, and there's never cane sugar in that food. It is always high fructose corn syrup. Always. And so for people to blame sugar is just ridiculous because there hasn't been sugar, real sugar in food for like a decade. It's high fructose corn syrup, PUFAs, and fortified synthetic vitamins. The last 3 weeks, been waking up at 2 a.m. and go 2 to 3 days without a bowel movement, and when go, it's not satisfying. Nothing changed from the beginning. Raw carrot, liver pills, bedtime snack, any suggestions? Sometimes cascara sagrada can help. For some people, they like to move their bowels, sometimes activated charcoal. Sometimes like what happens is after weeks and weeks of doing something, we cause bacterial imbalances, not in a bad way, but things are dying. And so the microbiome is shifting or there's something stuck. So like near the gallbladder, or we've been sitting a lot and we need to do like some type of massage, like intestinal massage. Sometimes just doing extra magnesium helps things move. But whenever something like that happens to me, I just do something that's going to loosen things up. Something as simple as like a warm glass of salt and lemon water in the morning. That'll wipe you right out. But if that doesn't work or I don't want to do that, I'll just do magnesium. And then if I get really desperate, which sometimes it happens, especially when estrogen is high, I'll do like cascara sagrada. But always notice if you have weird bowel symptoms, is it happening at a certain time of the cycle? Because oftentimes it's happening when our estrogen is heightened, like around ovulation or right before we start our period. I've done tons of gut healing work, all the tests and protocols, and still have significant bloating. Do you think low metabolism could be the main cause, and staying the course with this way of eating can resolve it? Usually, yes. Most people are in the same boat as you. I probably spent like $20,000 on gut protocols and tests before I started pro-metabolic eating, and nothing resolved my bloating quite like stopping eating nuts and seeds and grains and beans and tons of green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables. It did take some time for sure, because I was coming out of some other issues. But yeah, I mean, I've seen so many women, dozens, if not hundreds, get their bloating down just with pro-metabolic eating, especially if nothing else was working. What's the name of a brand for vitamin E you recommend, and at what dosage? I can't tell you guys dosage. You guys have to figure that out for yourself. I do have a post on Instagram that gives you guys my favorite brands. I like PUFA Protect, Unique E, Ultimate E by Thorne. I have a few different ones. Can you recommend any kids vitamins? I don't really like multivitamins. How do I make sure to get enough protein in a day? I eat 2 to 3 eggs, bone broth, meat in the evening, but it doesn't come near 80 to 100 grams. I don't know why, like I never have a problem hitting my protein. I do 3 eggs in the morning with 2 scoops of collagen for breakfast. I always have a big chunk of Jell-O with my raw carrot salad mid-morning, which comes out to about 10 grams of protein. At lunch, I have grass-fed beef with bone broth. Mid-afternoon, I have a coffee with 2 scoops of collagen and then like some type of fudge or something like that. Then at dinner, I do like a large piece of like fish or shrimp or shellfish and usually a cup of bone broth with dinner. And then I'm usually already at 100 grams by that point. And then after dinner, I'll have ice cream and sometimes I'll add some casein protein for extra protein. But, you know, the biggest way that I add protein to a meal is I either add collagen, Jell-O, so I'll literally have a square of Jell-O with my meal in addition to what I'm already eating, or a cup of bone broth. It's an easy way to add 10 grams of protein to a meal. Last week, you spoke about how nobody in your life has been able to have healthy children. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. What are some of the issues you've seen heard? Eczema, earaches, bloating, constipation, headaches, they can't sleep at night, horrible colic, rashes, diaper rashes, that's a problem. All these things that we think are just normal for children, like a diaper rash, for example, it's not normal. If you had a rash on your butt, like, would you think that was normal? Like, kids with UTIs, kids with all types of just constant issues or just constantly sick, constantly runny nose, constantly sniffling, constantly getting, a cold or a flu or whatever. Constant. I don't know one person that has a kid that I know that their kid just looks healthy and happy and doesn't have problems. Do you take magnesium bicarbonate in between meals or with meals? I've been avoiding it with meals because of the bicarbonate. Yeah, it totally lowers stomach acid. You'll find that you're not digesting very well. I take it in between my mid-morning snack and my lunch. So when I get back from my walk with Sam, I will have like a adrenal cocktail with coconut water, orange juice, my coconut water powder from Bumbleroot, their hydration powder, and then I add my magnesium bicarbonate to that. So I guess it is like a liquid electrolyte beverage, and I drink that about an hour before I have lunch. Had a stool test done and Candida showed up as well as other strains of fungi, yeast, and some other things. My question is for Candida. I have had some yeast infection symptoms for the past months. The doctor I've seen in the past recommended a low-carb, starch-sugar diet, no more than 1 cup of starchy foods, and only half a cup of fruit a day. Yeah, but when you starve yeast, it doesn't die. It just gets angry and starts to move to other locations like our sinuses, our vagina, and that's where we end up with these chronic yeast infections. So, I have a whole IGTV episode. It's like 30 minutes long talking about Candida and yeast. Candida, all yeast are native to our digestive tract. They belong there, just not in overgrowth. When they're overgrowing, our immune system is malfunctioning. We don't have what we need to take care of it, which is copper. And then estrogen usually is encouraging the growth of yeast. So women who have estrogen dominance often have yeast issues. I highly recommend checking out my IGTV episode on Instagram where I talk about yeast. Also, so funny talking about toddlers. Our best friend's kid always comes over frequently and always asks for OJ. Yeah. All the kids I know, a couple of them will always ask me for like fruit, orange juice, like all the sugar queen. I'm in your FN course and trying to think of the best way to address this whole thing. Should I just not go overboard on starch sugar, but eat enough of them? Like, is there a limit of carbs you don't want to go under? I'm just confused now. Yeah, because the conventional approach is just to cut their fuel source. I don't think people understand the biology of yeast. Like, yeast don't die when you starve them. They're going to find sugar, and they can actually release things into the bloodstream that raise our own blood sugar. So our body will eat its own tissues to feed the yeast. It doesn't do anything. We want to keep yeast localized in the gut. We never want it reaching its finger-like projections into our bloodstream and becoming systemic. That's when it becomes a real problem. If we can get our immune system functioning well and we can deal with our estrogen dominance issues and get our copper levels up, oftentimes the yeast issues take care of itself. Sometimes we need to add in some antifungals to help with that. But in the meantime, I would never personally try to starve yeast, because that's an impossibility. And a lot of people try to starve their yeast and they cut carbs, just to feel, and they'll feel better for a little while. And then they start to feel worse because they're starving themselves in the process. They're not fixing an issue. They're just trying to put a Band-Aid on the issue. My mom had her whole uterus removed back in the day due to some cysts, and the doctors didn't know anything else than to cut out whole organs. She's also hypothyroid. Any ideas on how I can help her? This is actually still happening today, which is so weird. It's a weird way to deal with things, in my opinion, but not an expert, so don't come for me. I don't think it's a problem to have your uterus removed as long as you have your ovaries. You can still ovulate and not have a period because you don't have a uterus. So, you want to make sure there's still progesterone involved. But yeah, it all goes together. Good for you for seeing it all goes together. But sometimes that uterus removal can cause stress because there is a uterine to pituitary connection or brain connection. And when the uterus is lost, I do think that there's some type of stress involved. I've just worked with too many people who have had hysterectomies to not believe that. And so it's just kind of restoring, calming the brain down, calming the stress response, and supporting the thyroid, just as if you don't treat yourself any differently if you don't have a uterus or do. It's just about supporting the metabolism as a whole. But when the ovaries are removed, that's when you really want to concern yourself with progesterone. Are sore breasts before period a sure sign of estrogen dominance? I don't want to say a sure sign, but it's definitely a strong suggestion because the breast tissue, when it swells or when it gets very tender, the breasts are very sensitive to estrogen. Opinion on glutathione for mold detox. My practitioner is recommending. I personally am not a big fan of glutathione. It can oxidize and cause a lot more problems. I am just not a fan. I know it's very popular in the functional medicine space, but I think it can cause actually a lot of metabolic problems. Does it make sense to test for heavy metal toxicity and to do a strategic detox? Not necessarily, because most of the times what you're using is heavy duty chelators, and that's going to chelate good minerals or metals like copper as well. It just depends on someone's context. I'm not going to say it's a good or bad idea, but it depends on what tests you're using. A lot of times just increasing your minerals, doing a hair tissue mineral analysis and just figuring out where your minerals are at is enough to deal with heavy metals. Hi, Jessica. Hi, girly. I started paying attention to my breast soreness, and it's pretty much throughout my cycle. Is this just extreme estrogen dominance? Past scans showed nothing. Trying out breast castor oil packs. It can be extreme estrogen dominance. Maybe reevaluate fiber a little bit. Do you need a little bit more to absorb estrogen? In addition to the raw carrot salad, do you need 2 raw carrots every day? How is your intake of fruit fiber and root fiber? Do you maybe need to add some, cooked greens with dinner, or maybe a little bit of some beans, really, really well cooked, soak them before and then cook up some beans. I'm not a huge fan of grains and beans, but I do think they can sometimes have their place. And beans specifically have a lot of soluble fiber that can kind of help bind to bile acids, which can help you kind of restore your bile. Sometimes what's happening, because we recycle 95% of our bile acids. So remember that bile is the primary vehicle on which toxins and hormones get expelled from the body. But if we're recycling bile acids and they're still, kind of toxic, then we can have a problem. So soluble fibers can help bind to these bile acids. So that's where some really, really well prepared beans or even grains can come in and help bind to these bile acids. So your body's forced to create more, or just focusing on liver and gallbladder health in general is a good idea. So when I feel like I'm struggling with estrogen dominance or my tests are reflecting that, or have in the past, I know that I've got to focus on my liver and I've got to focus on my gallbladder. And then I also have to make sure that that estrogen is being eliminated, bound to and eliminated. And that's sometimes where the missing puzzle piece is. But yeah, I would explore estrogen dominance And then have you experimented with any type of like breast massage? Is your chest tight? Like, is there any lymphatic drainage being blocked? Sometimes we have like really poor posture where our chest is really tight and it's preventing lymph drainage. So being very good about doing like breast massage, especially underneath the breast, making sure that those lymph areas are being supported and helping to be drained. I used to mostly use almond flour for baking, but stopped once I learned about PUFAs. Wondering what you think the best gluten-free flours are for occasional baking or when still healing your gut and metabolism. I think it just depends. Like some people will use cassava, some people will use like sweet white rice flour, some people will just use like a gluten-free blend that has like rice and potato starch or whatever. I think it just doesn't matter as long as it works for you. I like to use like a gluten-free flour. What's your take on the theory that super common surrounding dairy producing a lot of mucus in the gut, making it worst thing you can digest for gut health? Medical Medium talks about this. If anyone brings up the Medical Medium to me one more time, we're going to have words. I'm just kidding. But Medical Medium is a quack, you guys. He is crazy. So I don't think like if somebody like quotes him, I don't care what he says. If dairy produces mucus for you, you have a problem in your gut because what creates mucus? Bacteria create mucus. And then there are bacteria that eat mucus. So there are different types of bacteria that do different jobs. And if dairy is bringing out or expressing a problem that we already have, then we need to focus on why we're getting inflammation from a food. Maybe we have to cut dairy for a little bit. That's fine, but that doesn't get rid of the inflammation that has occurred. Do you deal with fleas on Sam? If so, what do you use? I hate using chemicals on my pup. He doesn't really get fleas. Yeah, and when he does, like if he ever did, I'd just use diatomaceous earth. I'll just sprinkle diatomaceous earth on it. All bugs suffocate and die when you do diatomaceous earth. Can you predict your menstruation with temperature and cervix position? Will the temperature fall the day you start bleeding, or is there a way to know is going to start a few days before? Some people, like my temperature will start to decline about 2 days before, and I know it's coming, but I have a very set day. I menstruate on day 28 every month. So I know my period's coming on my 28th day. But yeah, I do have a temperature decline. I don't know if that's true for everyone. I honestly don't know because I'm only in my body, but I do know I have a temperature decline about 2 days before. What about sore breasts during ovulation? Is that also estrogen dominance? Well, yeah, because, estrogen is dominant the day before ovulation. That's the only time when we're supposed to be estrogen dominant. It's that hormone of growth and cell proliferation. So it actually brings on that ovulation. So the day before ovulation, we are estrogen dominant. And then once we ovulate, we're supposed to actually make enough progesterone to now have progesterone be the dominant hormone. But if we're not, then estrogen can become that dominant hormone. Or if we're not, pooping it out, if our gut's reactivating it, if our liver and gallbladder are sluggish, those can all be reasons why we're maybe staying estrogen dominant all period long, or all menstrual cycle long. As a transgender woman, is HRT affecting your health as well? You tell me. Is there a light therapy that can help with nightly wakings due to lack of sun in the winter? Is there a light therapy that can help with nightly wakings due to lack of sun in the winter? I personally like to use like a chicken lamp or an incandescent light that has like a warming bulb. I think that one works the best. For me at least. And I sometimes will actually use it all night long. It really helps me sleep very peacefully. Appreciate your help, Jess. Thanks so much. Of course. Would you recommend Shilajit? It just depends on your situation, your context. I don't recommend it across the board. I personally love to use it. I use it pretty much every day, especially before podcast interviews or times when I need to be super energetic. Or if I'm recording videos or something like that. But yeah, I like Shilajit. How do you feel about oral progesterone to supplement? I like progesterone. I don't think it's like a magic fix-all, but I do think it can be very helpful for some people once you're nourishing properly and speeding up your metabolism. Once liver glycogen is depleted, does the body turn to muscles for glycogen, or does gluconeogenesis occur? Also, if one has a lot of muscle mass, would glycogen depletion take much longer to occur? Bingo! This is why I encourage building muscle, is because it's a very metabolically active tissue. It has a lot of responsibility involved. You have to fuel it, but it also helps with metabolic stability. The more muscles you have, the better your glycogen storage is, and the less your body has to use its backup system because you have carbohydrates stored in the muscles. However, if you don't eat enough carbs to fill out those muscles during the day, then it's a moot point. So this is where athletes get themselves into trouble, or people that are strength training in general, because they're not eating enough carbohydrates pre, intra, and post-workout to fill their muscles with glycogen. And that is where the problem lies. But yes, you're right on the money in regards to having the muscles to be your kind of like fallback guy. Beta-glucuronidase also came up really high in a GI map. Calcium D-glucarate was suggested. Do you like this supplement or just going what's in FN? I like calcium D-glucarate. It can lower beta-glucuronidase, which is reactivating estrogen. But if you have high beta-glucuronidase and you have high estrogen, of course you have yeast overgrowth. You know, yeast grows like crazy in an estrogenic environment. But I like calcium D-glucarate. It can be effective for people who have high beta-glucuronidase. My boyfriend gets an itchy back before bed, and if I look close, I can see that the areas are dry. What could this be, and how can he help? I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe it's dry skin. Can you like try coconut oil or shea butter or something like that? I'm not really sure what it is. If my toddler doesn't have any interest in eating meat or drinking milk, do you have any recommendations to help with that or replace those nutrients? I would like try different things, like trying to make chocolate milk, maybe trying like something that they like. So if they like mashed potatoes, for example, I would chop up meat really small and maybe try to feed it to them that way with lots of butter and cream. Like I would just be trying to sneak this stuff into foods that they like. And then also be conscious of their digestive health, because if kids are just drawn to like carby, starchy foods, sometimes that's just a habit that needs to be broken. And that doesn't mean it has to be broken like this. It just sometimes needs to be broken slowly over time, meeting them where they're at. But if there's one thing I can encourage moms to do is get creative. Like, be sneaky. I mean, I don't know if that's the best advice, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's better for them to get something than nothing, in my opinion. I'm on FN and I seem to get random poops that have some floating pieces. What could this mean in regards to my gallbladder? It seems random when it happens. Usually that's a sign that like the gallbladder is kind of not doing, it's not at its best. Remember that estrogen does cause a lot of stress on the gallbladder. So is it happening at times when estrogen is at its highest? Like, remember, we get our spike pre-ovulation, and then we get another smaller spike mid-luteal phase, and that's usually when the gallbladder starts to love to act up for some women. What meal courses or coaching do you recommend? I don't know if there's any like meal courses in the metabolic space. I mean, like I really like Isaac Pullman. I really like Mitigate Stress, like Nathan Kalana. I like Matt Blackburn stuff is good. Trying to think of like who else is like male. I mean, who else? Like Real Food Gangsters are good. So yeah, there are a few people that are both like male, like they go for both like male and female. Most of the stuff that I talk about applies to men as well. It just, they have a different rhythm. So their testosterone peaks in the morning and declines over the course of the day, whereas we have a 28-day rhythm. What vitamin E oil and which progesterone for face to help with acne scars? I personally just use Ona's progesterone oil in vitamin E. It's progesterone suspended in vitamin E. I've had some acne pop up on my chest and back and believe this is related to iron detoxing. Is this possible, and how long do you think until it subsides? It's possible, and I couldn't tell you how long until it subsides. Sometimes we can do things that are going to help with that. So trying to implement more fibers that help bind, like well-cooked mushrooms, bamboo shoots, doing a couple raw carrot salads a day, supporting with liver, vitamin E, shilajit can help. Sometimes activated charcoal can help, and then making sure the bowels are moving. All those things can sometimes help speed up those things. Would you recommend trying dairy out even if histamine and gut issues aren't 100% solved yet, or will it go bad and cause cramps most likely as it has in the past? I can't tell you what your body's going to do. Truly, the only way we know is to try it out. But if you're wary about it or you don't feel like you're ready, just give it some time. Eczema, help us. Eczema is usually like liver, so we got to really support that liver. I have high histamine, IG 220. What is the first thing I should do and best supplement to start with? I'm not sure what the question is. Histamine IgE 220. I'm not sure what that is. I love tuna and eat it at least once a week. Do you think that's a problem with all those PUFAs? What type of tuna? Is it like fatty tuna or just like tuna in a can? Because tuna in a can doesn't really have a lot of fat. Whereas like fatty tuna or like tuna steak, that has a little bit more PUFAs. So I don't know what type you're talking about. Do you know what might contribute to low libido all throughout pregnancy and breastfeeding? Adrenals. Yeah, adrenals, just not nourishing enough. Remember, your body is expending energy doing other things. And if it doesn't have enough energy to crave that reproduction, like it's not going to. Also, like think about it. Libido is simply biologically a craving to reproduce. You're in the process of reproducing. So it's kind of normal for libido to be low. I mean, I know sometimes like in the media or some people say their libido like skyrockets while they're pregnant. That's not true for everybody. I mean, for some people it can be, but not everybody. So I don't think it's necessarily not normal to have a lower libido when you're building another human being and then feeding that human being. So I think sometimes having those expectations on ourselves is important. Now, making sure we're getting enough energy is important, but and a lot of women get low libido because they're not eating enough or nourishing enough. They don't have enough energy to expend on reproduction, even trying to reproduce. But some women, I would say that during pregnancy, that might be a little bit of a different scenario. I was wondering your recent thoughts on vitamin D. There are big people in this community who are on opposing sides, and I'm very confused on this matter. Thank you. Personally, I'm just someone that errs on the side of caution. I'm not going to supplement a high dose of vitamin D. I don't think that's smart. I don't think it's smart to do that with anything. I think that's pretty stupid. If someone told me to high dose vitamin D, I would second guess it. That goes with any supplement. So personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal unless you're someone that just like randomly believes what people tell you to do. Like, oh, just high dose this. Like, I would never high dose anything unless it's coming from natural food. So I don't really think it's that like controversial. If you're doing a ton of high dosing, you're probably going to cause problems. Of course you are. And if you don't have enough vitamin D, it's probably going to cause problems too. But to synthesize or make vitamin D, you need a lot of things like magnesium, boron, potassium. So like those are just facts. It's kind of one of those things where if I don't have those things, I'm not going to make vitamin D. So I better make sure I have those things. And if I don't have vitamin D still, then maybe I should take some. It's as simple as that. I don't think it's that extreme. I think it's just people get caught in their like black and white point of views and they're just like, never, or like, all the time, like all the vitamin D. And I'm just like, can we just like land somewhere in a more reasonable place? That'd be cool. Where do you purchase 1 gram vitamin K2? The only one that I know is 1 gram per drop is the Thorne vitamin K2 drops, but I personally get a Novix vitamin K2, which has some MK4 and MK7, and I just take 2 of them. Is high histamine can induce anxiety and OCD symptoms? Yeah, I have actually, if you follow me on Instagram, I have a whole IGTV episode that I did this week talking all about histamine. I've eaten eggs in the AM for years, and I've finally gotten tired of them. Any great ideas for breakfast without eggs for a while? I do like milk powder pancakes. I'm trying to think of what else. I just love to do like sausage hashes. So I'll get like breakfast sausage or like spicy sausages and make like a hash with like parsnips or sweet potatoes or just regular potatoes. What else do I do? I like beef stew, like stews, or like broths with meatballs, like floating meatballs, floating meatballs. I just like to, make the meatball and just toss it in the soup and let it simmer and kind of boil. Trying to think of what else. I like to do like more like Asian style breakfast, like white rice. I do sometimes do eggs with it, but you can all like, of course, do like some type of fish. Like my biggest thing is like when I get sick of eggs, I just do regular food for breakfast for a while. And sometimes I'll want eggs like later on in the day. Is it a good idea to get the blood tests that go along with the Morley Robbins root cause protocol? I'm having an HTMA and being asked if I want to do the blood test to go along with it. Yeah, like the full Monty iron, because HTMAs don't give you the full picture of minerals, whereas like a full Monty can give you the stuff that you're kind of missing, or the RBC minerals. So you can't always tell everything with the HTMA, but that doesn't mean that you can't do the blood test at a later date. So say your HTMA comes back and you still have questions regarding some of the things, that doesn't stop you from getting a full Monty or like the blood test and seeing if that can help fill in the gaps for you. Certain probiotics, kefir and yogurt, will give me butterflies in my chest immediately after. Any idea what might cause this? You guys know I'm not a huge fan of lactobacillus containing fermented foods. I think lactic acid probiotics cause a lot of problems for people. Not to say that they're bad, but most probiotics are absolute SHIT, as are the bacteria that they're using for kefir and yogurt. So be very cautious with what little critters you are introducing into your system, because as I've talked about in my histamine video, a lot of them are histamine producing, and so they end up causing histamine issues down the line, gut issues. I think a bite of like real fermented sauerkraut here and there is fine. Kefir that uses the actual bacteria in the milk, not like weird added bacteria. Greek yogurt, not a regular yogurt, because Greek yogurt is lower in lactic acid producing bacteria than just regular yogurt. So those are kind of like my favorite ways to get around that. I never had eczema before in my life. Then I got it during pregnancy after a V. I'm not going to say the word, but it rhymes with Maxine. I also went from 170 to 240 in under a year. I'm curious if it was the V or weight gain. What does your gut tell you? Do you have any suggestions for extreme irritability when taking any form of supplements, all herbs and phytoestrogens in general? Especially when needing extra support with major hair loss and other thyroid. Wait, do you have any suggestions for extreme irritability when taking any form of supplements, all herbs and phytoestrogens in general? When needing extra support with major hair loss and other thyroid, why would you take phytoestrogens and supplements that irritate you? That would be my question, because they're not doing anything good for you. Doesn't sound like. Do you think supplementing with prebiotics is a good idea while breastfeeding? Well, what prebiotics are we supplementing? Because I like certain things. Like I like apple pectin. That's, I think, is a very effective prebiotic. I like triphala powder. Sometimes like some inulin can be okay, just a tad, never going overboard. Certain things can be okay, but if you already have an imbalance, it's just going to make the imbalance worse. So I think people should be careful with prebiotics. That's for sure. Any advice for receding gums? Deal with your gut issues, and how's the health of your whole oral cavity, we should say, your mouth, because saliva is going to affect the health of the gums and the teeth, and vitamin K2 is going to affect the health of the saliva. So it all kind of goes together, but gut health in general, and then just focusing on oral health. Like I like coconut oil pulling, brushing and flossing, but not like crazy. Like I think people love to like really get their gums, and you don't want to be too harsh on your gums, and then using like high quality toothpastes and flosses and things like that. Is it okay to use a body butter containing castor oil if I don't have time to do a full castor oil pack? I mean, I don't see a problem with that if it works well for you, but it's not the same. It's not going to do the same thing. Have you ever been to the Philippines? No, I have not. It looks so beautiful there. What supplement do you absolutely recommend to everyone? I don't really think people need like any supplements. I do think that like making sure you're getting enough magnesium is important. So if that's going to be in a supplement or you're going to make it like a job to get from Whole Foods, that's important. Um, Vitamin E is really hard to get in a diet, so it can be, you know, that is one of those things where it can be helpful to supplement in most cases. I don't think vitamin K needs to be supplemented, but some people benefit from it. So it just really depends on your situation. And I think it's like it's just really all about context. So that's just kind of, you know, I don't think that supplements are necessary at all, especially if you're not getting like liver, oysters, like those just nutrient dense foods, or just getting nutrient dense foods, like enough calories on a regular basis. That's like one of those things where it's just really important to get the foundations and the fundamentals before you actually focus on supplements in general. And I think some people they love to focus on supplements because they're easy. I get it. But you got to focus on the foundations. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so sorry for keeping you so long. It's been an hour and 50 already. I'm sorry if I didn't get to anybody else's questions. I kind of like have lost my place here. But if you have the patience, please come next week and ask your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. It's always wonderful to see you on Wednesdays, and I'll see you live next Wednesday.